I think you're ready for politics because you just avoided the question.
No. Look, let's be really honest. Like, I'm not ready to do any of that. What I need to do is I need to figure out, A, my business and where it's going, and then B, I do think it's worth figuring out what are the conflict of interest laws and what do you have to do if all of this were to come to pass, because I could not make a credible decision unless I knew that, because I just have things that I want to do. And that to me are the most important things. Like, I'll just be really honest with you. Like, I'm working on something in batteries that I think it's important for a lot of places, much, more than just California. And so, like, if I have to abandon this battery project, I wouldn't do it, just that simple. So I got to figure that out.
And you got to write down all the illegal things you've done on a piece of paper and all the illegal things you're doing on a daily basis. And then we got to make sure that you're clear on it.
You have a case of moleskins? Because I could start for Chamath. I could start filling that in.
They're never going to get uncovered. Yeah.
The Oppo research has begun.
Right. That's what the dinner on Thursday should be about. Should start the Oppo research program.
Oh my gosh. That's a long program.
But there's certainly a groundswell in interest, right, Sax? And there's certainly
it's crazy.
I think Chamath has a lot of folks that love his passion and the way he speaks to them, and that he has a real sense for what I think people are feeling, and can speak to that, and obviously has experience in kind of making decisions and allocating resources, right? So, I think there's a lot of interest, Chamath, and a lot of drive to see you.
Here's what I'll say.
Shit or get off the pot.
Here's what I'll say. I've grown up with nothing, and getting to the other side, I'm completely convinced that poverty is a disease, that it is, except in this disease, it is systematically reinforced. You know what I mean? So, Jason, stop that, Jason.
Talking Chamath is good.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, all Americans and the citizens of California.
I came from nothing.
I would eat rice 3 days a week, and then I would eat the plate the other 4.
By the way, the reality is that if I were to do it, if like all the checks came back and it seemed like it was a plausible thing, I would only do it for the 18 months and just kind of, but you'd have to get elected on a mandate where it was so clear that it's like all of California wanted these 5 or 6 laws to pass. Like, I think it's like, you're not running a candidate, you're running a platform. So doesn't matter who it is. Whoever goes in, it could be me, but it could be, frankly, Kim Kardashian or The Rock or David Sachs. I think what's really important is we should get alignment on a handful of laws that change the trajectory of the state. And the reason why that's important is if those laws can pass and the state turns around, then that's a roadmap for the other 49 states. And I think that's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
I think it's about getting adoption of a playbook, a playbook to fix California. And if that playbook is something that a group of people from different parties and different backgrounds can coalesce around, and publish that playbook in a way that's easily understood, and
you can take it and run it.
Let's each pick what our top item would be. For me, it's the building of multi-family unit housing. I think would be in my top 3. What's in your top 3, Sax?
Well, if I were to write a sort of catchphrase for a campaign, it would not be make California great again, but it would be something more like tough and tolerant, because that's what I think California wants. So tolerant on LGBTQ rights, tolerant towards people of different nationalities, towards immigration, tolerant on social issues. But I think what Californians really want now is tough on crime, tough on hard drugs, negotiate tougher deals with these unions and special interests who are just pillaging the state. And frankly, tougher on the politicians, because they're making it too tough on the people to live and to run their businesses. And, we need to make it easier on the people and tougher on the politicians.
Freeberg, what do you got in your top 3 items? If we could only put 3 items on the docket, 1, 2, and 3, I think creating much more affordable housing through multifamily, going up as opposed to building out, and just allowing, anybody who wants to add a couple of stories, and just more housing would lower the price of housing. And maybe we have to change, the taxation and maybe evaluate the value of homes, because right now you buy a home in 1970 for $50K, you're paying 1% of that for the rest of your life, right? Which then makes it impossible to move. And you got two people living in a 5,000, 5-bedroom square foot home because they can't move because their tax basis is so low on it, right? What do you got, Freeberg?
I mean, look, the challenge is with any one of these things, you have to balance it. It's like we talked about last time. We talked about adding a transaction tax to trading on markets, but you also have to get rid of the capital gains tax, right? If you're going to get rid of that, that proposition that locks in the property tax rate, I think it's Prop 13, right, Sex? If you're going to get rid of Prop 13, you've got to phase it out over time. But to create the opportunity on the other side, which means how do you create more affordable housing at the same time that you get rid of Prop 13? You've got to enable, as you pointed out, the ability for more rapid housing to be developed and dropping regulatory constraints and maybe removing some of the union pricing and some of the work that gets done in the supply chain and so on. And so, I think it's about the balanced trade-off amongst these things. If we're going to talk about trying to keep the top 40,000 households in California and you're going to drop the tax rate on them to keep them here, which is an extremely controversial anti-populist move and right now, you'd have to find another way to kind of resolve that gap, or at the same time kind of reduce the cost of our top cost is education. So you need education reform. Our second top cost is healthcare. And other related services, and how do you resolve that? That there's a lot of structural things in there. There's probably a checklist of 10 things that you would say, let's go negotiate better prescription drug prices. Let's make the services more efficient, meaning how many patients does a doctor get to see per hour, per day, per year, per week, whatever. There's all these things that you kind of go through, and you can make each one of those dollars that are being spent more efficient. So as much as I'd love to kind of rattle it up to 3 different things, this is a management problem. And, as those of us who have run businesses that are struggling or challenged have experienced, there isn't one thing to do to fix a problem when something is not operating well. But it really does come down to talent. And so, I would think that the people that are sitting in those assembly and Senate seats need to be the right people. And the person sitting in the governor's mansion needs to be the right person who will surround him or herself with the right people who are operators and managers and leaders who know how to resolve these problems and go through and do just like that guy did in Dave with the napkin and, write out, look, here's the 10 simple things we can do to fix HHS, and here's the 10 simple things we can do to fix higher education, and go in and cut half the expense. And if you cut half the expense, you have a lot of things you can start to do. And so, I don't have a simple answer for you, J-Cal, but I think it comes down to balance.
Would you say school vouchers, since you brought up education, are the quickest solution there, is to create more competition quickly by giving parents the ability to take their voucher and go to whatever school they want?
I'll be honest, I haven't read enough on school vouchers to know the ramifications of the programs that have been proposed. So I'm not going to be very thoughtful in that.
Well, I'll speak in favor of the idea of giving parents more choice. I mean, these schools are they being run for the students or for the special interests? Because right now the parents don't really get any choice. I mean, look, if we can recall the governor, why can't the parents of a school recall the headmaster? I mean, why don't we give them the ability to circulate a petition if they're unhappy? I think in the case of the governor recall, if we get 12% of voters to sign the recall petition, then you get a recall election. So what if you had a system where the parents of a school could sign a petition and then they vote? And if the majority of the parents, majority of the parents vote to recall a school, then they can basically replace the headmaster and run it in a different way. Why shouldn't they have that choice? It's crazy to me.
Well, they're paying.
For who's
That's why.
Let me give you a little math I just did on my calculator here. So the average student in California costs $18,000 a year, roughly. Okay. And we have a classroom size on average of about 25 students. It's actually higher than the national average. So you multiply 18,000 by 25, that's $450,000 per classroom. Okay. Now how much does a teacher cost? I mean, okay.
No, that's the average in California for teachers. It's
fine, but let's say that we paid teachers extremely well. Let's say we paid the teachers $100,000 a year because we all believe in having great teachers, okay? That would still leave $350,000 left over. And remember, you don't have the real estate cost, right? The state already owns all these schools. So where is the money going?
We've systematically entrenched poverty. I think that what happened to you, Friedberg or Sachs or me or J-Cal, I don't think it's possible anymore. And I think that we are aberrations. And I think that folks that are younger than us would look at us, and they look at us, I think, in part because they're like, God, I would love to have that shot. And I don't think they know where to start. And I think they also see a system that feels very much rigged against them. So,
just buy Bitcoin. I mean, this is why they're attracted to buying Bitcoin or doing what they did with GameStop, and why Wall Street
insiders versus outsiders.
They feel like they have this opportunity to show the man, and they don't. This is why they don't want to take on school debt. I mean, I don't blame millennials for being disgruntled if they got 100 or 200K in debt, and they were told this degree would get them, this would be their ticket, and it's totally been disconnected. It's a lie.
It's a great lie. It's a great lie. And
that's
so,
the big lie. Yeah.
That's one of the big lies. And I think we're sacrificing it now because we're making this great sacrifice because we're exposing these lies to be exactly as they are. So, I mean, if I had to pick a couple things, J. Cal, I would say the most important thing for me is school vouchers tied to, I would increase public school salaries. You pick your number. I don't really care what it is. $100,000, $125,000. But you need to tie it to school vouchers so that any parent can put their kid into the best school that is for them.
Or start their own school. Like there needs to be competition.
Or start
if
their
five
own
parents
school.
get together and they each get an 18K voucher, they can spend $100,000 on a teacher to teach 5 students. And if they hit their goals, like they're going to do better. What 5 parents, even the most disadvantaged parents would take advantage of this?
To me, that would be that's like the first above all else, because I think it creates accountability and it allows our kids to have a decent shot. The second thing I would probably do is I would actually just cut all taxes to zero on the personal side, but I would introduce a progressive taxation system for corporations. And I would try some of these novel things like getting equity in turn for credits and allowing folks to capitalize certain expenses. I mean, these are like, I know people think that's also stupid, but like, if all we did was just own 1% of Apple, Google, Facebook, you'd have $3 trillion, $4 trillion, trillion with a T. You know what I mean? Well, not you. That's 4 trillion in market cap, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like if you control 1% of that, it goes a long way. So there's that, and then I do think that there's something that we need to do for people to be able to live. I remember interviewing somebody, and what he said to me just made me so sad. He's like, he drives an hour and a half into work every day, and then drives an hour and a half home. And I was like, how is this possible? And I just thought to myself, like, what does that do to you and your family? He goes, I don't see my family. And I'm like,
brutal.
Well, can't we just increase your salary? And, that's not possible because of the job that he had. And then he couldn't afford to live. And so all these things just build up in the system. So those would be my 3 things.
It sounds like we have a bestie platform. We need to figure out who the bestie candidate's going to be. Hopefully we can convince Chamath to do it. But the first thing we got to do is we got to make sure this recall happens. There's another 5 weeks or so to gather signatures. So everybody should check out the website. It's rescuecalifornia.org. It's rescuecalifornia.org. If you have the means to donate, please do. I donated $50,000 to it. They are taking donations. And even if you're out of state but believe in this cause, like Chamath said, what happens in California, or as California goes, so goes the nation. It would be a really good thing to send a message, even if you're out of state, to these special interests who are ruining the state, that this isn't going to be tolerated, because every politician in the country is going to hear that. And they're going to start realizing, oh, I can't just pay attention to the insiders. I need to start paying attention to the outsiders, to the majority of citizens who've never been organized before, but now they are getting organized. And so we need to send this message. That is the first step. We're not going to get any positive change in this state until the politicians are held accountable. And this recall is the starting point for that.